Hey, everybody. So, my main message today is going to be do not be afraid. And I'm going to go deeper into that in a minute because I don't want you to think that I'm just being escapist or flippant or anything like that. But that is going to be my message, the main part of it. And I mean it. And I hope that we can get to that place together. But here we go. I mean, things are heating up today, and we need to pay attention. Donald Trump did just mobilize 700 active duty Marines to move into the streets of LA to use force against American citizens. We've got to let that sink in. Over the past 8 years, one of the main excuses that people have tried to use to convince me that Trump isn't an authoritarian is to say, well, it's not like he'd use American soldiers against American citizens. So this is huge news. And all sorts of legal experts are going to be weighing in on this to talk about the legality of what he's doing. And all sorts of experts on authoritarian movements are going to weigh in to help us all to contextualize what we're seeing. And political people are going to weigh in to say what are the political things that we can do about it. But I feel compelled to just serve in a specific role right now. And as much as I shy away from calling myself a pastor, partly because I'm a retired pastor and partly because I really don't like to mix politics and religion any more than I have to during these times, I just have to admit that at a time like this, I can't help but think like a pastor, even though it's been 10 years now, I think, since I retired, almost 9 years. And I can't help but look at what we're going through from a pastoral lens. And I feel like I've got a few things to say from that perspective. So this situation, I think, could lead people down a lot of paths that just aren't healthy and they're not helpful. And sadly, I think a lot of evangelical pastors have been afraid, the ones who are pastoring churches right now, they've been afraid to touch these issues. And so they aren't going to be able to offer very much help to their congregations during this time, except with general biblical teaching, which I think they'll hope against hope that their congregations will take and apply to this big, unspeakable orange elephant in the church. So I do think that those of us who can speak need to offer something helpful. So that's what I'm going to try to do. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but I would break 3 temptations out into these broad categories that people could be going through right now. I'm speaking specifically from a pastoral point of view for Christians, but I think these things apply to everyone too. But the first big category of temptation would be for most of my listeners, people who tend to be people who've opposed Trump for a long time. And you've probably seen all of this coming like I have for years. And so one of your biggest temptations is probably going to be to give in to fear or hopelessness. And that's why my main message today is do not be afraid. And like I said, I am going to have more to say about that in a minute. But the second temptation, I think, is for Christians who've been duped into supporting Trump and his MAGA movement, probably because you bought into some common arguments about how his policies are somehow more Christian than his opponents. Okay, I'm not going to argue about all of that right now. But your temptation, now that he's been completely unmasked, now that he's completely removed the mask, I would say, your temptation is going to be to justify yourselves. Because it's going to be hard, I think, as a human being, to face the reality of this monstrous movement that you helped bring to power. It's a movement that's been promising all along to run roughshod over your neighbors, and you helped bring it to power. So your temptation now is going to be to buy into all the excuses, to buy into this authoritarian rhetoric that plays on especially this law and order messaging. And that law and order messaging is designed to excuse what is a radical act of aggression on the part of a president that, if you're like a lot of the people I know, a lot of your friends and family have probably been warning you that this is going to happen for years. So here it is. And I would ask you, don't look away. My message to you is just please stop with the completely understandable self-justifications. Don't fall for the law and order rhetoric, and just get off the MAGA train while you still can, because it's headed for a dark place where I don't think you want to go. And my hope is that by the time it gets there, it's going to be an empty train except for the engineer. I mean, wouldn't that be great? So for those who've supported Trump up until now, your temptation is going to be to avoid the evidence of your eyes and the warnings of people that you used to respect, who it turns out were telling you the truth all along about the dangers of Donald Trump. So I would say just lay it down. Just come out from the MAGA movement. If today doesn't convince you who those people are, I have to ask, what will convince you? Just come home. And then the third temptation is one that I think we're all going to face, and that's to allow our anger to turn into resentment, and our resentment to turn into hatred for the people who disagree with us. Any energy that any of us give to our petty hatreds right now is only going to rob us of the energy that we need to be pouring into loving our neighbors and protecting the vulnerable right now. So any actions that we take that are motivated by hatred instead of love, those are actions that are only going to bring about more hatred in the end. And Donald Trump wants the nation divided by hatred. That's what all demagogues want, and he's proven that for years. So don't give him that fuel. Let's find ways to put love into action, even when that action means opposing Trump's movement. Love is going to win in the end. And these brutal antics that Trump is performing, these flexes, are going to prove to be the stupidest actions he's taken yet. I firmly believe this. Every act that he takes that makes himself look more powerful temporarily is an act that's going to ultimately undermine his credibility. And it's just one way that Trump's actions are the opposite of Jesus and the opposite of what Christians are taught. We're taught, when I am weak, then I am strong. And in a very real sense, when Trump looks strong, he's at his weakest, because he's failing at undoing the American democracy. The courts are holding, many of them, and I don't believe he's going to succeed in completely undoing it. So every pathetic move that he makes to flex the temporary power he's been given, he only proves his inability to win over the hearts of the American people. So he uses these forceful things instead. But you know what will win the hearts of the American people? Love, hope, peacefulness, joy. All those things are supposed to mark Christians in this world. So let's not give in to hatred. It's not going to take us where we want to go. And frankly, we're just not designed for that. We're not designed for hatred. So with those three temptations in mind, here's my main message for today. And I'll add, this is probably going to be the theme of most of my messages during this upcoming summer, because Trump is attempting to visit a whole lot of hatred onto the country this summer. So here's my theme in the face of that. Here's what I plan to center my messages around this summer. First, do not fear, but be alert. Understand the times. The battle is on, but it's not a battle in the streets of America, ultimately. It's in the hearts of Americans. The battle is between two competing views of justice, and this is so important to understand. This is what it's going to boil down to. On the one hand, between biblical justice, which I've talked about a lot and which I'll keep talking about, and on the other hand, authoritarian law and order, which is a fake kind of justice. And that's the battle. Everything that's happening now is meant to convince Americans to settle for law and order instead of justice, because that's how authoritarians gain power. Trump and his movement want us to abandon biblical justice. And he's been working for years to sort of tarnish the image of our systems of justice in America, and to make the whole idea of social justice sound like a swear word. Christians are designed, Christians are meant to be the solution to this sort of problem. When people are throwing around ugliness and falsehood and distortions, we're designed for this. We're supposed to be salt and light in the world. We're supposed to be ballast in the ship. You know, when the storms get heavy, the seas get heavy, we're supposed to be that ballast that kind of keeps things centered. But too many of us have stoked this authoritarian madness by parroting that same stupid law and order rhetoric. So I'm calling on Christians to be the solution. Do not fear. And for most of us, here's the thing about fear. I think fear is unwarranted anyway for most of us. I mean, sure, things are going to get really bad for people who don't have some of the protections of citizens, and so we need to protect them. But if you're a citizen of the United States, you still have the right to free speech. You still have the right to protest. A lot of people in America right now are afraid for very real reasons because maybe they're undocumented or maybe they're part of a minority that they fear might experience some persecution. And so I understand that fear, and I'm not in any way trying to minimize that. But that's why the rest of us have to find a way to overcome our fear. Of course, there's things to be fearful when you've got a madman who seems unchecked right now at the helm. But for those of us who aren't the targets right now, I think the people who are at risk right now need us. They need the rest of us not to tap into our fear, but to tap into our power. And so I've got to start with people of faith. You know, this is the kind of time that challenges us to live by the words, if you're a person of faith, to live by the words that you claim to believe. We need to be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you. Do not fear, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Those sorts of things. And I'm not saying those things to browbeat anyone into not being afraid. Well, here's a verse. Why are you afraid? It's not that. What I'm saying is this is a great time to go deeper, to go back to Scripture for all of us, to be reminded of these things. It's a great time to use this time to grow deeper in our faith. But having said that, aside from that, we have all sorts of reasons just in the world that we see, even in these scary news cycles, not to give in to fear, but to tap into our power instead. If you're an American citizen, you and I have the right to speak. I mean, I would caution you, keep your speech peaceable and truthful above all, but I would have said that at any time. Not because of Donald Trump. We should just keep our speech peaceable and truthful. But we have the right to speak. Citizens especially have the right to speak. I mean, we all do, but it's guaranteed to us. And a lot more dominoes would have to fall before everyday citizens started getting persecuted for speaking out against injustice. If we do it peaceably and if we do it truthfully, we have the right to protest. And I think that we've got to exercise that right, not in some crazy disorganized way, but I think in an organized, peaceful way. Of course, we've got to do it peacefully. And we won't accomplish anything by violence or by hateful rhetoric, but peaceful protest is our right. And of course, there are going to be people out there who are trying to stir the pot because there are some people, for whatever reason, who want the violence. But the answer to that is not to stay inside. The answer is to come out in more force, peacefully, to show the world that millions of Americans are bearing witness to the abuses of our current government, and we do not approve. So we have what I'm talking about here, which is some constitutional power as citizens, and I think we have to use it peacefully. But we also have political power. And here's one example. Even if 5% of the Christians who voted for Trump and his Republican enablers were to switch their votes in, say, 2026, the way that I did in 2016 after a lifetime of voting Republican, which say anything you want to me about that, I will accept it. But in 2016 I made that choice. Some people made it in 2018. Some people made it in 2020, 22, 24. If 5% of the people who voted for him in 24 were to change their vote in 26, the MAGA movement would be dead as a political force. The MAGA movement relies on the votes of millions of people who don't belong in that movement. And once even a small percentage of those people realize that, that movement is done. But even if those people don't wake up and change their minds, there's still this immense untapped political power in the people who simply stayed home in the last election, or the people who've never voted. And the Donald Trump and his minions are trying to frighten us into thinking that this is going to go away. And I don't believe it is. When an ignorant thug like Donald Trump shows his true colors, the way he's doing, and the way he's planning to do all week long, including this ridiculous parade on Saturday, people wake up to that. They start to wake up. Don't let these thugs around Trump fool you into thinking that we've got no power. If we organize politically, this will be the last gasp of the MAGA movement. And sure, they're going to do a lot of damage and they're going to hurt a lot of people, but then they'll be out of power soon enough. And then our task is going to be to make sure that we learn from the mistakes that led us to this place. But in all of that, I don't want to lose sight of the main point, which is these are frightening times for a lot of people. And those people who are most at risk need the rest of us to find a way to rise above our own fear and to access our power instead. And it's a kind of power that's rooted in love, even love for our enemies. And so I hope that makes sense. But if it doesn't, I plan to keep repeating it in a lot of different ways as the summer goes on. And hopefully something good is going to come out of all this madness that Donald Trump is intentionally forcing onto the nation. And let's not forget, the battle ultimately is not in the streets. It's in the hearts of Americans. And the battle is about this. It's a battle about whose version of justice is going to ultimately prevail. Is it going to be the same tired law and order distortion of justice that authoritarians always use to seize control? Or is it going to be something more like biblical justice, which involves fairness and equity and equality before the law, and that calls all of us to care for everyone, to build a peaceful society for all of God's children? And that's something worth striving for. So thanks for listening.